is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Deadwood, Season 1, Episode 6, Plague. In this episode, smallpox has come to Deadwood, and the doc is just trying to find anybody to help him out. Luckily, our friendly retailers in town have a business interest in making sure the entire town does not die off. Also, in other news, welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Many thanks again to Patrick for commissioning these episodes. This episode was a lot different than I expected it to be. It being titled Plague sort of gave me the impression that we were going to have half the town wiped out by the end of the episode. Like, I expected it to be focused on everybody suddenly getting sick. I thought that people would be a lot more ignorant about it than they actually are. It seems that this all takes place during a period when people are getting the basics a little bit more right in terms of how disease spreads, which is sort of less frustrating to watch, because I was expecting it to just be, you know, a bunch of people who don't know any better. And it turns out that they are really dealing with this in the best way they can with the tools that they have. And I'm in love with Dr. What's his last name? I can't even remember his name. But yeah, the doctor is just like my jam. And I love the fact that the widow is so snotty to him, because I love her too. And I, like, as much as I want them to be friends, I kind of get where she's coming from. He handles it so well and doesn't take it personally is the other thing. And he does that exact same thing with Calamity Jane, who is just spoiling for a fight the second she walks into town, the second she walks up to his building, and he doesn't take the bait. He's really good at handling her. And I feel like most people would just kind of wash their hands of her because she's difficult. She's a fucking tough human being. I mean, I think we can all agree. So yeah, I really enjoy these characters a lot. So, all right, let's start off talking about Seth, though, because what goes on with him is really, it's so not what I thought we were going to get. So I had said that I thought he was going to be, having killed, Jack McCall, because he comes and grabs that overnight bag from Saul and takes off at the end of the last episode. But it turns out what he's doing is chasing after Jack McCall, who has already left town, on the advice of Al Swearingen, who's basically like, somebody here is going to kill you, so you're gonna need to leave, and you better do it before I'm the one who kills you, because I would love it. So Jack gets on his horse and takes the fuck off, and by the time that Seth has like made up his mind that maybe he will just go kill this guy, it's too late, and now he has to chase after him. So when he chases him, he gets jumped by what appears to be a relative of the man who was beheaded. The Sioux man who was beheaded. And this dude is no fucking joke. He shoots Seth's horse, which I just feel really bad about. And he gets down and like is, you know, shoving him. He could easily just kill him, but he clearly wants like a fair fight. And is sort of nudging him and like yelling at him, doing that like that yipping sort of like cry in order to rouse Seth up and get him to fight back. This is a really tense scene. And we find out later that this dude, like this is a real warrior. This guy's kind of a badass. He's got all kinds of markers on his horse indicating the number of men that he has killed in battle, the number of times that he has counted coup. And we wouldn't know any of this if it weren't for Wild Bill's secondhand man, Charlie Utter. I really want to know more about this. what's Charlie's deal? Because Charlie Utter seems to have a deep respect for an understanding of Sioux traditions that you just do not see from the white people in Deadwood at all. And I want to know, like, did Charlie, like, spend time with Sioux? Did he, like, wind up in a position where he, like, met somebody and had, like, some sympathies and learned more? Or is it just stuff that he has sort of absorbed over time? There is a tone as he tells Seth what he knows, almost as if he would rather not admit how much he knows, because I think he's worried about being accused of being like a sympathizer to the heathens, and he's able to more comfortably open up about what he knows once he realizes that Seth is receptive to it. Because what happens here is that Seth gets in a really brutal fight with this Sioux man and winds up killing him. He's like takes out all of his rage on this guy and like beats his head in with a rock until he's like, it's barely recognizable as a human face. Like, this guy is just ruined. And obviously this is a moment for Seth of him just taking out rage that he's been carrying around for days now. And it's a shame that he killed somebody that I think in a way he sort of respects, but doesn't know and doesn't necessarily deserve it. This guy came after Seth, sure, but he did it in retaliation for somebody who literally came and cut off his brother's or friend's head for money. And it's so, I really feel for Seth in this moment, because he has that rage of beating this guy up. But when he pulls back, you can see that he's just sort of like, oh, fuck, I can't believe this. I did not want to do this. Look at this guy. Jesus Christ. And then Seth just passes out because he got hit in the head pretty fucking hard. Like, he goes sailing down from his horse when the horse gets shot. It is not a good situation. And he passes out, and Charlie winds up coming up on him. And the first thing that Seth does once Charlie brings him back around is tell him, hey, Bill's dead, by the way. I'm sorry. And Charlie has this look on his face because he says that he was hoping this was like so many other times when he had heard Bill was dead. And it was just like a rumor that turns out to not have any truth to it. But in this case, it's somebody that he trusts who saw the body, who knows. And I'm just so, like, I really just love the way that Wild Bill left it with Charlie, and it feels so, like, and I feel bad, too, because Charlie was, like, probably Bill's closest friend, and he doesn't even get to go to the funeral, you know, they had to bury him, like, days earlier. I just really feel for him that this all went down while he was away. There's also the question of, like, whether or not there's illness in Cheyenne, which is where Charlie Utter just was, and he's coming back. And I'm, like, hoping that it doesn't seem like he's sick at all, but who knows? And whether he'll get Seth sick, you know? But regardless, he wants to get up on his horse with Seth, who's in such bad shape that I really assumed they'd turn around and go back to Deadwood. But no, he wants to light out and go get fucking Jack McCall after all. And it's Seth who has to stop him and be like, why don't we bury this guy first? He wants to pay him some respect. And the first thing that Charlie says is that he'd rather not take the fucking time. Which Seth, like, sort of, Seth just kind of gives him a disapproving look, and it's just like, it's not going to take that long. We can make the time. And once he says that it's like, and makes it clear that he doesn't really think much of the fact that Charlie was going to leave this guy here, Charlie sort of snaps at him a little bit and says something like, you know, well, I'm going to try and find the exact spot where he says it. Because he says something about interfering with this man's medicine. Oh, here it is. You ain't doing him no favor. I mean, his way to heaven's above ground and looking west. And Seth looks at him like he's a little surprised that Charlie knows this and says, well, let's do that then. And Charlie is surprised in turn. I love the fact that both of them are so nervous about having respect for somebody who is not a white person. Like, I really like that bit of their characters where they're like, it's in their heart to have that kind of respect, but they are aware of how most people are, and neither of them, like the fact that they are revealing to the other that they are willing to take the time and that they know the traditions is them being a little bit vulnerable with each other and really putting it out there that they are taking up an unpopular position, which is just, like, so fucked up, but also there's something really like kind and genuine about this, despite fucking Seth being absolutely disgusting, covered with blood here. But yeah, he says, well, let's do that then. And Charlie says, don't you want to take him over the ridge, this fucking hole in the ground, and put him up there with his headless buddy? I mean, that's what you nearly got killed for, interfering with his big fucking medicine, burying his fucking buddy over the fucking ridge. So apparently the body of his friend is over there, because the guy who, like, killed him only took the head into town so that he could get paid for the head. So he got killed for, like, intruding on that whole thing, which is really insightful that he fucking knows this, you know? So they wind up taking the body over to this, like, and I'm not sure what this is called, but it's sort of like a structure, like a, I don't want to say a dais. I'm sure there's a specific name for it, but it's, there's the head of a horse built into it as well. Like, it must be his friend's horse. And it's covered in, like, all of these skins that are painted with different symbols and whatnot. And they put his body up there along with his friend, he's not, like, his friend is all wrapped up and it's very carefully done, but they sort of just leave him there, and they're about to walk away, and Charlie turns around and, like, adjusts the body so that it is done more carefully and appropriately. And I liked that too, that he takes the time to turn around, put the guy's leg up, and Seth gives him a very approving smile. Like, you know, I'm glad that you know this. I'm glad that you told me. I'm glad that we did this properly. I feel a little bit better. Like, Seth did not want to kill this guy, but at the very fucking least, he's going to give him his due after the fact. So yeah, I just really, I thought that this was a really revealing moment character-wise. And I also really liked getting to see the tradition in which the Sioux handle their dead, because I did not know about this. And I find it really interesting, like, all of the different traditions. And I do feel a little bit bad that his horse got killed, though, because, you know, Seth's horse, I mean, getting killed, but also the fact that the horse of the brave who's been putting up there, he apparently, him dying means that his horse gets killed as well, which I imagine is something like so that he can ride the horse in the afterlife or something like this, since the head is up there. And I feel real bad for that poor horse that, like, he had to die because his master died. Like, that just doesn't seem fair. But the warrior that Seth killed, they take his horse, or they leave his horse there. They do not kill it, you know, and put it on that structure with the other one. But he doesn't take it back to town, I don't think. So hopefully that horse finds his way back to the tribe, because I feel a little bit bad for him, just, like, hanging around, waiting, wondering where his guy is. But yeah, I really liked this whole scene between the two of them. I thought I was going to get much more of a, like, vengeance plot from Seth this time around. And instead we get this reminder that Seth does not like to kill people. Like, he will do it, and he really doesn't even hesitate. And in his temper, he feels righteous about it. But it's immediately followed up with a really deep understanding of what he just did. And I don't want to use the word regret because I feel like that puts a little bit too much of like, oh, if I could go back and change it, I would. It's more of a sense of like real responsibility and maybe a little regret for the situation arising in the first place. That sometimes I think the regret is Seth feeling like, why do people have to be this way? That it turns into killing them is the only way to stop them from hurting another person. Why do they put me in this position? And why am I the guy who has to fucking take these stands all the time? And I can understand that because he does seem to be in that position a lot. Because most other people in Deadwood do not have a strong moral compass. And most of them who do not have the skills that Seth has. Like, you know, we've got the Doc who's definitely got a strong moral compass, but he is not going to hurt people. That's just not who he is. We have the newspaper man whom I love, by the way, and I gotta find his name later, but he, you know, he's not gonna fucking shoot anybody, even though he definitely has like a moral compass and strong opinions about things. And of course we have the Reverend, same thing, you know? So I really fucking sympathize with Seth in this way that's like kind of unexpected, that he plays a similar character in this to his character in Justified. But in Justified, there's a certain recklessness there that I don't feel from Seth. In Justified, there's like kind of a almost, I don't want to say a death wish, that's too strong, but there's like a nihilism to him, where it's almost like he's daring somebody to like hold him accountable because he's so, he's got so much rage. And Seth, it doesn't feel like the rage that Seth has is directly related to why he's going after people. Whereas Raylan Givens in Justified, his rage is from a whole other situation, like the way he was raised, and, you know, it's a whole other thing. So yeah, I find Seth to be a kind of like more mature character and just more grounded. And I just really enjoy him, and he's frustrating, but also like, I like him, you know? So anyway, okay, let's go back to town where we're dealing with the plague. It's really a bad situation. Like, so we have the poor kid that was going to get sent off to Nebraska. It turns out that he couldn't make it because he got sick along the way, and he comes back and he winds up at the gem initially, because he starts to take sick when he's with one of the women who works there. And I really enjoy like the moment where Al says something like, of course this would happen at my place. And the Doc has to be like, you're not the first one, actually. This isn't the first outbreak. And he realizes like, oh shit. And I also really like I feel bad for this kid because it turns out like he is a virgin, and that's part of the reason why he like got so excited at Cy talking about like, oh, you got to get some of that Nebraska pussy. And when he comes back, one of the women who works for Cy, she has sex with him even though he's like breaking out in spots all over him. And I fucking worry deeply about that girl because they know how this like travels, and some people aren't willing to even breathe near him or touch him. But then we got this woman, you know, like literally fucking the guy. I really hope she doesn't get sick, and if she gets sick, I am going to hold them so very responsible. But the reason that they have her do this is to like show him one last kindness before he dies, because they feel low-key responsible for him getting sick in the first place. Because he gets bounced, he goes from the gem, then he winds up at the hotel, I think, for a little while, and then he leaves there and goes back to, once they realize that he's, like, from Bella Union, he winds up back there in the end. But, yeah, this dude is, like, the first harbinger. Then the woman that he was with, she is really concerned about getting it once she realizes that he was sick. And and I mean the woman from the gem, not the woman who actually had sex with him, who was at Bella Union, but the woman who was with him at the gem, who was going to have sex with him before he started to shake and sweat and obviously be really sick. She didn't actually sleep with him, but they kissed. And her mother died of the plague, died of smallpox, when she was a little girl. And that was what resulted in her and her sister getting like dumped somewhere because her father did not know how to take care of the two of them without the mother. And probably what led to her having to work at the gem in the first place. So she is really flipped out at the idea that maybe she's going to get sick like her mother did because she saw how bad it was, how it goes down. And this is one of those moments where it's like, Al could be just saying this shit to like calm her down. And I mean, obviously intends to calm her down, but also I think he struck on a point here. He says to her, you know, she's telling him this terrible story about being abandoned and her mother dying. And he's like, well, as sad as a fucking story as that is, I think there might be a little nugget in there that the fact that you're still here means that you're not a candidate to get sick. And she sort of stops crying and looks at him like that had not even occurred to her. So we have her and we have Calamity Jane, who dealt with the guy in the woods and like cared for him, and she didn't get sick either. So it seems like she's also immune. And the doctor himself is apparently immune, which thank goodness. And then there's another person who I feel like we find out. But in any case, there's a few people in town that we find out can't get it, or I don't know if it's straight up can't, but definitely can't as easily as everyone else. And this will probably be very beneficial since not the entire population will die overnight. So Merrick is the name of the newspaper man. Merrick is at the bar and he's drinking, and apparently he had stopped drinking for a little while, but he's drinking again. And it feels like part of his faith is gone over the fact that Jack McCall was not convicted. Can I just say, one of my favorite moments in this show, and it's such a dumb thing that doesn't really make any sense, and that's why I like it. The doctor is standing at the bar, or no, Merrick, the newspaper man, is standing at the bar. He's pouring himself a shot. The doctor comes in, and Merrick holds up his glass and says, "Doctor, libation." And the doctor just sort of like gives him a nod and walks past him because he has some shit to do. And Merrick looks a little confused and stops and then thinks, I wonder if he thought I said live patient. And I don't know why, but I fucking cackled. I found that so funny. Just like, there's no reason for that line. It doesn't do anything in the scene except to like kind of maybe emphasize how drunk Merrick is. But like, what a weird, I really like it. I really like it. And the scene like cuts off from there. And it goes to the doctor, with Al and, Johnny, or, trying to think what the name of this is. It Johnny? I think is the one that's sick. But yeah, and I don't really want to like look into this because I feel like whenever I search for medical stuff, I wind up getting really awful photos turning up on my search that I don't want to see. But he is complaining a lot about the fact that his back hurts, this kid who's been infected. And I'm curious if any of you know what that's about, like why smallpox makes your back hurt. Because when the first man, Andy, who was sick, was complaining about his back hurting, I didn't know he was telling the truth. The whole thing with Andy was that they lied and told the doctor, oh, this man fell down the stairs, because they didn't want anyone to know they had an ill person staying in their brothel. And now I'm like, is this is apparently an actual symptom. Him talking about how, oh, my back. That wasn't him playing along with the ruse. That was an actual symptom that he was having from smallpox. So, yeah, guys, if you know what that's about, I'm very curious because I imagine it's something happening with like your kidneys or something, because your kidneys are sort of in your back and it seems like your lower back, but it might, I don't know, is that like a spinal thing or what? You know, spoiler alert, smallpox is fucking horrifying. So I feel really for everybody that's involved in this whole thing. So briefly, I want to talk about Joni. Joni is the right-hand woman to Cy Tolliver at the Bella Union. And she approaches Ellsworth, and it's a really, like, I kind of like this moment because it's her job to, as Cy says later, create a fucking atmosphere, and to keep things lively. And she clearly goes over to Ellsworth because that's her job, and she's going to make the best of it and go and talk to this guy like she's supposed to. But then she realizes that she actually really likes Ellsworth because Ellsworth's a fucking sweetheart, even though, Ellsworth, you were a dummy that told, what's his face? Hodgins? Is that his name? Well, whatever his name is that killed, Brahm. You went and told him that you saw him, which I don't know why you did that. But apparently nobody's going to do anything to him, which I don't... Why did he tell? But in any case, she really, like, takes a liking to him. And she gets him to go play craps, which is, you know, also part of her job. Is getting people to drop a bunch of money in this fucking casino. And he's playing, and he has, like, a pretty good streak, and then he goes down. And he's talking about how he wants to stop, but, well, she says it, and then he's like, well, no, let me play another round. And she can see that he's, like, running out of money, and because she actually gives a shit about this guy, she's sort of like, we can stop if you want. That's fine. Like, sort of trying to get him to stop. And Cy overhears her and comes over and is like, or you could not stop, right, Joni? Like, really irritated with her. That this dude who is, like, clearly ripe for the picking right now isn't going to be taken full advantage of. And Joni winds up walking away as Cy takes over and throws dice and gets sevens, like, over and over and over again. Now, I have to think that Cy has weighted dice hidden up his sleeve somewhere, because later on, his friend is rolling those same dice and, like, trying to, it seems like, get the sevens the same way. And I'm not sure if he knows, like, I feel like he must know that Cy has weighted dice. Like, there's no way he thinks that that's legit. But, there's an interesting sort of weird animosity between Cy and this other dude. And I don't know what to make of that exactly. But yeah, Cy is like, he's such a cartoonish sort of character until he goes and talks to Joni upstairs. And he really obviously does care about her. Like, he says something about real fucking affection. And as he says it, you can see in his face that he means that shit. Like, he really cares about her. But also, this is his business, and even as much as he likes her and cares about her, that's not going to interfere with his shit at all. He is definitely going to do what he needs to do. And he strokes her face really softly and says something like, "This is how I always want to touch you. Don't make me do it any differently." And I was like, that's a pretty good fucking threat, man. You know, like, he doesn't raise his voice to her. He doesn't grab her. He doesn't do anything. He just says those words. And it's a weird convo because he's asking her, genuinely asking, not the way that Al asks, where he's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And he doesn't want to know. And he just wants you to move on and get the fuck over it. Cy asks her, what's going on? And he wants to know. And she tells him that she's not even sure, that she wants to do she had been unhappy, apparently, when they were living on the river. And he says this, and I'm like, did they have, like, a riverboat, or were they just in a hotel that was near the river, or what? And she's obviously unhappy here, but she didn't like it there either. So, and she says something like, well, I don't know, maybe it's the fact that there's no river here at all. And he sort of gets frustrated, which I feel like he can be forgiven for. And it's just like, really? Like, you can't just make the best of it. She's being Goldilocks a little bit. And I really don't know if she's telling him the truth. I feel like there's got to be something else going on. That there has to be some other problem that she's dealing with. And I feel like it's that she doesn't know if she likes Sai anymore. Like maybe seeing how cold-hearted he was with Andy, just literally tossing him out into the woods to die, has given her pause. But I can't help thinking there has to have been occasion for her to see how cold-hearted Sai can be before this. Or maybe it's the first time she's seen him be cold-hearted with somebody that he had professed to actually give a shit about in the first place. And maybe that's like making her realize that in the end, she probably means no more to him than Andy did. And if it came down to it, if she got sick, he'd toss her out as well. Which, you know, maybe that's what it is her like reevaluating how much she means to him and what she's doing with her life. And there could be a lot going on here. But it does seem to have all started with Andy. So yeah, I'm just curious about that, and I'm curious if the show is going to continue her, talking with and getting to know Ellsworth, if that's going to come up again. Because I feel like Ellsworth had been going to the gem, and now it feels dangerous there. And, you know, it doesn't seem like they're going to come after him, but he also doesn't want to be around people who he has to worry about. And he's met this other woman that he likes here, and he didn't take her up on, like, you know, sleeping with her or anything. So that's still something that could be on the table for him. So I imagine that he's going to be at the Belle Union again. Like, I feel like this is going to probably be where he spends a lot of time. So yeah, that whole thing was just sort of a weird, you know. All right, so let's go to this kid, Joey, who's the one who got sick. That's his name, Joey. I thought it was Johnny, but he's Joey. And Cy Tolliver is unwilling to, like, throw him out on his ass the way that he should have, the way that he did with Andy. But he's also trying to get this kid to keep his voice down about talking about how sick he is in front of everybody and scaring them off. And so Cy starts talking with Eddie. Eddie is his, I don't want to say partner, assistant. What's Eddie exactly? I wonder if Joey was after a remedy for Andy, maybe without even knowing. Ain't you clever, Eddie? Was I being clever? I thought I was worrying about the plague. Eddie's just like fucking poking at him a little bit, and I don't really get it. I don't understand why Eddie is so like antagonistic here or what he's doing, but I'm very curious now about his relationship with Cy. Okay, let's talk about what's going on with our dear friend Alma. Alma is detoxing from taking the laudanum all the time. And she's being looked over and watched by Trixie. And Trixie is supposed to be giving her opium. And Trixie has not done that because she respects the fact that this woman is trying to get clean because she once had to get clean also. And so she's directly contradicting Al's wishes, which last episode I went on and on about how baller it is that she's willing to take this risk, and I stand by that. So this episode, Al's really starting to get impatient about that gold claim and wants an answer and wants EB to press the widow into signing it over. And EB, understandably, has a sort of like, EB's in the position where he's the one who actually has to face this woman, and Al has no regard whatsoever for like the decorum of the situation because he doesn't care if everyone knows EB is shady, and EB does care if people know that he's shady, which I think is a smarter place to be, because if you're going to Like, if you're going to be trying to play people all the time, which clearly that's what EB is for in terms of him being a tool for Al, you need to let people know, like, you need to not let people know that he is the player, that that's what his job is. So if he shows his hand too completely by being really obvious about pushing this woman into signing it over, he's sort of like, shown his hand and won't be useful later on. But Al is so impatient that he doesn't see it that way. And I am really I get irritated with Al because it's easy for him to yell at EB about how, I have to lead you by the hand and tell you every step of the way what you should do. But he doesn't understand the situation the way that EB does, going there every day and seeing what's kind of relationship Trixie has with Alma now. So EB goes over there finally. And the whole thing that Al told him to do is tell Trixie, I need to talk to her. And once she's out of there, then you go in and talk to the widow. And because essentially EB feels like Trixie is watching the widow like a hawk and will not allow her to do anything that will not be advantageous to her, because she is aware that the widow is in the position to be taken advantage of. So they need to get Trixie out of the way, since she's kind of become Alma's actual friend. In opposition to everything anybody thought. Well, he gets over there and tells her that Al needs to talk to her, and she's like, yeah, I'll get there, and I'll go in a minute. And he's like, no, he needs to talk to you now. And she just says to him, I'll get there when I get there, EB. And closes the door in his face. And I was just like, I love her so, so much. So Edie pushes the matter a little later. When she finally does leave, he goes up there and he talks to the widow. And he can tell that she is not high the way she is supposed to be. Because the whole thing is Trixie's supposed to get her high to lower this woman's inhibitions and get her a little dozy-headed so that she will sign over the gold claim to Al without putting up a fight over it. And obviously she has not been doing that. She has not been taking the drugs. So EB goes and tells Al, listen, I do not think that this bitch was high. I can tell if you are and if you aren't, and she wasn't. Which leads to a scene that I just loved of Al questioning Trixie about this whole thing. And one of my favorite moments was when he asks Trixie, he's like, are you giving it to her? And she says, I'm giving it to her. And she goes behind her, what do you call it? Her screen in her room to dress. And she says that she eats it. And he's like, well, next time I want you to go back there and look down her fucking gullet and make sure that there's none left. And she's like, really? That's really obvious, dude. And he's like, I don't care. You need to do what you need to do. And also, how can you not tell if she's high or not? And Trixie says, I can't tell because I've never seen a rich person high before. Which is a really smart answer, right? Because, yeah, this woman is of a totally different social class, and the way that she handles herself is going to be miles outside of what Trixie has experience with, because there is an expectation for her behavior and her education, and she isn't going to become an out of control lout the way that the gentlemen who are high, or if some of the sex workers get high, are going to act. And Al is he's really staring Trixie down. He doesn't know if he can trust her or not. But when she gives him that answer, it seems to satisfy him. I feel like that answer, more than anything, gave him enough pause to give her another chance at this. Otherwise, I don't think that he would have believed her. And she goes back and tells Alma, the next time that EB is around, you're going to have to fake being high. Which leads to a scene that is just wonderful, where EB comes in and he's trying to catch her, and she's like, in bed, like sweating, still detoxing. And she has to put on this little performance, which is just so amusing. And I just need to say that this actress, she has the most luminous, beautiful skin. I know she's supposed to be like sweaty and gross here. And like, she is to a degree, but oh God, her skin is just so beautiful. Molly Parker, that's it. But yeah, he asks, "How are you?" And she sits up and she says, "Better, Mr. Farnham. Thank you." And she like arches her back and flutters her eyelashes at him and sort of like has this like come hither look, her hips out with her décolletage exposed because she's in her nightgown. Like the whole thing is so amusing because he is so uncomfortable. And I really loved it. It was just so funny. And I like her expression on her face after the fact of just like knowing that she did a good enough job, that he bought it, but also being fucking tired, and because she has to put this whole show on while she's like feeling like she's on the verge of death, I'm sure. So later when EB talks to Al, he tells him, "Oh, she was high as a kite for sure." And when Al's like, "Well, did you make her the offer?" He said, "The timing was not right. She was randy and she was coming at me and I just was not interested in getting involved with this woman." And I kind of enjoy Al's response to it. Like, let's see, must have put a double handful of that dope down the widow's mouth. The dope had made the widow randy. Lustful looks, heavy breathing, out-thrust chest, the full catalog. Only hope you comported yourself as a gentleman, EB. There was a child in the room. He like gets really mad about it, and I just really liked it. So for now, Trixie is safe. She has managed to pull this shit off. I'm wondering how much longer it can be a secret. But for now, I'm very proud of her. I'm very proud of the widow. I love the fact that they're outsmarting these dummies. This is very tense, and I'm enjoying it. All right, let's talk about how we're going to deal with the plague in this town. I found this really interesting. Al calls a meeting of all of the like foremost, probably it's a combination of like leaders and retailers, but also just comes down to like some of the people who actually have the money and they would have a personal investment in making sure people don't get sick. And what they decide to do is work the public relations angle. I have to say, as much as I know that marketing, as much as it feels like a very modern thing, as much as I know it's not modern, I was still really surprised at how this went down and how like how smart Al can be. Because I know Al is smart, but I always associate his kind of smarts with being really, really underhanded and shady and murderous and violent. And seeing him be able to be this kind of smart, where he's relying purely on words, is a really refreshing change and emphasizes to me just how smart he can be. And his fallback position is always to beat the shit out of somebody or shoot them or God knows what. But he can do so much here without doing that. So what it comes down to, is that they are going to have to figure out a way to like get ahead of this with everybody in camp so that they don't all panic and bail, and so that there's no customers left for anybody. And the way that they figure out what they want to do is they are going to split the cost of sending out several groups of men to different areas to get a vaccine for it. And they have to figure out exactly how much they're going to pay these guys. They're going to figure out exactly how much the medicine costs, how long they're going to be gone, and how many people to send. Because, you know, I'm thinking one rider, but they're right. You can't send one guy by himself. Like, that's really dangerous in this area. You need to send a group of 5. So they're sending 5 people to different areas. Bismarck, Cheyenne, and I think there was another place. But I guess Nebraska, because they already talked about that. So yeah, 3 groups of horsemen, 5 riders to a group, $60 a rider, $10 in advance, 50 on return, 3 times 5 times 60, 900 at the worst, assuming they all survive. And paying for the vaccine and paying the doc, I'd say $1,500 is the target. And he puts in 500 and everybody else starts to like take out rolls of cash and figure out exactly how much they're going to put in there. And I really liked this, seeing everybody like working together and understanding that like the health of everybody in town is the backbone of them fucking making it, you know, like this is a group effort where everyone is willing to put aside their grievances with each other and deal with this first. And I like seeing moments like this where everybody's priorities are in the right place and on the same page, because it's really a favorite trope of mine is when people who genuinely do not like each other are forced into a situation where they are on the same side after all. And it can be worked in any number of ways, and some of them feel more cliche than others, because if they are both forced onto the same side against a common enemy, that for me isn't as interesting as something like this, where they're forced onto the same side by sheer nature. Like, this is not something that can be just dealt with like an enemy where you shoot them and they're dead and now we're enemies again, the two of us. This is something that they are going to have to remain united until the danger is past, and that is a subjective sort of call. And it's also something that's like they're both equally powerless against in their way. And I just really enjoy like this whole scene, and the fact that that Merrick is involved here, and he's talking about writing this this article about what's going on. Al says, "Yeah, we want to get a jump on the panic mongers." And he asks if he can talk to the doctor after this meeting is over, so that they can put a positive spin on it. Vaccine's on its way. Looks like it's the mild type or something. And the Reverend says it'd be useful to avoid apocalyptic predictions, and avoid stigmatizing the afflicted, which I appreciate that he actually gives a shit about that. Like, good for you on that. I really like this fucking Reverend a lot. So this comes the reveal where the doctor says, "Where will we locate the pest tent?" And for a second I was like, pest, but then I realized it's pestilence. I'm thinking pest like, you know, like common household pests, ants, rats, whatever. But it's pestilence tent. And Sai says, "Well, I bought a lot at the end of..." there's a slur in there that I'm not going to say. At the end of Asian Alley that you can use. And I just got to say, like, that slur just, I hate it. And Al here is like annoyed, but also really impressed at the fact that Sai had the foresight to do this. I just really like, I love later on when Al's talking about it and he's like, that is a man who has brass fucking balls and a long-term vision for the future. He's not even like angry. He's sort of reprimanding himself as if like, you know, I just didn't have the fucking imagination to do the thing that he did. And that's on me, man. Like, I could have been so much further along with my business if I had taken the risks that he's taking. And he's smart about doing it the way he is, too. So I like that I like seeing Al react in a way that conveys respect rather than just, like, anger and paranoia, which is his usual reaction to things. And And also, I'm very curious what that's going to motivate Al to do now. Because it could be that Al winds up like, you know, maybe he decides that he doesn't want to buy that gold claim. Maybe he decides that he wants to invest in something else. Or maybe he does want the gold claim, but he's going to do something, you know, I don't know. I feel like this is a turning point for Al a little bit. And I'm interested if I'm right. I would like to know, you know, what this motivates him to do. Because I think we've all been here, right? Where there's somebody who's like doing something that's sort of similar to us in terms of like a hobby or studying the same thing in school or who knows. And they just take things in a direction that you didn't think of yourself. And you're just kind of like, God damn. Like, there are times where you are really trying your best and you still aren't going to like hold a candle to this other person who's really good at what they do. And it motivates you rather than making you like angry and dejected. It makes you go, well, shit, I didn't even think of that, but you know what? That opens up a whole new world for me. I'm going to go after this. So, yeah, I really like this little development. So I'm going to talk about, what's going on with the Reverend here, because I'm not entirely sure. I feel like that thing where he smells burning is something that I've always heard of being associated with strokes. But I didn't know that, you know, it seems like he has epilepsy, but then when they talk about it later, he hasn't experienced this for his whole life. This is something that just started up for him like in the past couple of weeks. And I have to admit at being pleasantly surprised at how capable everyone was in this scene where the Reverend begins to have his fit. I thought they might think maybe he had smallpox and this was like some reaction, or maybe they thought that he was, you know, that there was something else going on, but they're able to like, you know, first thing we have is Al talking about how his brother used to have this exact same kind of fit. And Johnny comes forward with a spoon because the doc says, I need something to put between his teeth for him to bite down on. And he comes forward with his metal spoon, and Al's the one who's like, oh my God, he'll break every fucking tooth in his fucking mouth. No, not metal, dude. And they wind up getting like a leather, it looks like a sheath for a knife. And they shove that between his teeth. And it like does the trick for a little while, but everybody's gathered around him, like honestly concerned, like they're worried about him. And Al is watching him saying like, you're doing better. It's going to be okay. The doc is like stroking his head a little bit. And I just really appreciated the compassion of everybody in this scene. And the fact that it's a moment that this is very inconvenient to have happen. And they could easily all be really irritated, or all of them sort of write off the Reverend in a way because like none of them are really religious people here. But they don't. They give a shit. And I just wasn't really sure what to expect in terms of how they reacted to this. But yeah, everybody's like making sure that he's okay. And I'm worried because I like the Reverend a lot. And I do not want this dude to die. I really don't. And I don't want him to get smallpox, and I don't know what this is. He says he smells burning, that this happened like a week ago. I don't know what this is a symptom of, but it feels like the doc does, and he's just not saying right now. So like we have the doc like giving him kind of a checkup later and determining that he's going to be okay. And that he can help with the sick. Meanwhile, Saul, who has no idea what the fuck's happening with Seth out there, Saul still has leftover, lumber. And he offers, and I liked this too, that he offers to build some, like, a building to keep the sick in. But Al stops him and is like, no, it needs to be a tent because that gives it the impression that it's a temporary thing. If it's a building, we're making it like this is a permanent issue, and it gives a really bad image. And I was like, that's so fucking true. You are a very smart man right now. So him being the Reverend, and Calamity Jane, who has wandered back into town, agree to help the doc with the ill. And I really like Jane's return. Like, she's still drunk, she's still angry, she's still trying to pick a fight with fucking everybody who ever looks at her. But also when she like goes up to see the widow and the little girl, she's truly startled at how beautiful the little girl looks and how she's like dressed nicely in a nightgown and is all cleaned up. And you know, when she heard from the doctor that Trixie was looking after her, the fact that Trixie is a sex worker made Jane really angry that he like left a child in her care. But then that's set aside almost immediately once Jane sets eyes on the little girl and realizes how excellent a job Trixie is doing. So yeah, she goes and with the Reverend and helps the doc, and Saul and everybody are like, you know, building this huge tented area, and they're bringing in the sick. And I don't know, you know, how long it seems like when Jane is talking to the doc about what went down in the woods, it seems like Andy eventually died, right? And she just like left him there. I get, and it's hard to tell in this show, but I get the feeling it's only been like 3 days since Andy started to come down sick. So going and getting a vaccine, unless they're able to do that really quickly, the first few people taking ill here are not going to make it. I don't really know what the recovery rate was for smallpox by this time, but I feel like it still wasn't good. And meanwhile, we've got like Merrick working on the newspaper and like really trying to get a story printed while everybody is standing over him, editing every last word and making him reset all this type. It's really funny, honestly. Like, Merrick is such a good sport about it. Like, he's obviously irritated, but at the same time, he's just kind of like, you know what, Al, you probably do know the cretins around here fucking better than me. So yeah, I'll change it to free from gratis because you're probably right that they won't even know what that means. Like, he's so irritated, but also willing to compromise and do what needs to be done. And I just really enjoy Merrick a lot. So they finally wind up printing out their newspaper. And I like the fact that one of the things that Al asked to be included was that the return of the riders gone out for the vaccine is imminent. But when he's reading that out loud, what's his face, his buddy there is just like, oh yeah, sure, I'll believe that when I see it. And he's like, what the fuck? That was my contribution to this paper, which I found really funny that he like criticized. It's not even like he's criticizing that part. It's just the fact that Doherty, that's his name. It's just the fact that you know, he reacts in that way. And also Doherty is like mad that they're not including anything about baseball or something. There's something that he was like interested in, and that there's like a whole page being taken out to talk about this pestilence. Yeah. He's just like, well, I don't really give a shit about all this stuff. So yeah, that's basically the end, is Al talking about like, yeah, he sees the possibility of things, the idea of creating an emporium, long-term vision for the future. And then he ends it with, but I will say this, as far as a place to conduct business, you can't beat a fucking saloon. And that's the end of the episode. And yeah, I like it that there's like, I don't know, there's a certain bit of like regret and excitement as well going on. As a base of operations, you cannot beat a fucking saloon. That's the line. And that's the end of the episode. So lots happening here. I'm really curious if, I guess Seth and Charlie are going on together to track down Jack McCall. But I don't know what that looks like, because how long was Seth laying there? You know, like, I feel like Jack's going to have gotten enough of a head start on them that they won't be able to find him. Same time, Jack's really stupid. So he could have made it to the next town and felt like he was safe and that was all he needed to do and he just camped out there, But who knows? I'm very curious how that's going to go down. So, all right. Well, thank you guys very much for coming. Thank you, Anna Patrick, for commissioning this episode. This has been really fun to cover. I've just been really enjoying this show. And I have another one, I believe, coming up this Friday. Let me double check this right now before I speak ahead of myself. Yep, at 12 noon on Friday, 11 a.m. on Friday. So yeah, guys, I'll see you again on Friday with the next episode. And until then, toodaloo, motherfucker.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.